Hello and what's up everyone, I hope you enjoyed that intro. This build is truly insane. It's been very fun for me to start the end game off with. I want to show you guys, so I'm gonna get right into it. I do want to have a shout out to Lexyu. I will do a proper shout out at the end of the video, but he basically made this build and it was very nice for me to actually go and build it. I did do some tweaks and alterations because I don't have that much money as him has, so he has probably the best gear out there to actually make this for T15 map, but I'm just doing this as a progression to my older builds and my other build videos, which has been the mid-game video and the early game video. So that's why I also have things like Arc in there and Orb of Storms. So let's get into the spells. Sigil of Power is something that's on my stuff. It's quite nice for the boss one-shotting things. You just get a little bit more extra damage in there. Usually use this with Mana Tempest to get that extra damage. And also Orb of Storms is also quite nice because I have the Font of Mana in there for that extra mana regen. Usually when a boss does like a long cinematic thing or respawns or whatever, this is when I use the Sigil of Power and Mana Tempest and that kind of stuff. But usually 9 out of 10 times I'm not using these spells to clear the maps. Just more of a, oh, I need to use something. Okay, sure, I'll use these. And Mana Tempest, especially because you're quite locked and into where you are, and my Ball Lightning and Lightning Worm doesn't really work out that well with this moving, because it moves around a lot. There's the Ball Lightning. You don't really care about the DPS of this. It really doesn't do that much DPS at all. And it is more of a target to which you can Lightning Warp to. So you just shoot out multiple of these because you have to Unleash and also the Scatter Shot. So you just shoot out like 6 of these at the same time the first time, and then for other additional cash you'll shoot like 3 or 4 or whatever. And then you just move around, shoot out these ball lightnings, and then lightning warp to them for dealing that AoE damage. And he's also creating the shock rounds. That's very important. We have a unique in this build, which is quite cheap to be honest. So you could just get this unique. It's only like 1 or 2 exalted if the stats are on it aren't too good, but you really want that unique passive on it, which creates, which allows us to actually freeze enemies instead of being shock. It still works with the shock, but it's just a lot less efficient on the cast and freeze. I'll get more into that later. But the shock rounds still allow us to shock enemies despite we're building up freeze with all of our lightning damage now. So this is why just like crazy AoE damage with the lightning warp, and also mana regeneration is quite nice. Overcharge also really good. I have all of the gems listed in the guide below, so that's also for you guys there. Conductivity, just more duration and less delay for that extra lightning resistance. You could go and spec your passive points to have better curses if you do the conductivity spell and whatever. I don't have that right now, but maybe I'll get into that later in the end game. Lightning Conduit, this is our big bad like finisher, which we just smack enemies with and insta-kill bosses with. This is Lightning Conduit, which does 100% more damage per 5% shock enemy. This is why we want dual shock, and this is why we want to increase the magnitude of our shock as much as possible, because we're basically getting a multiplicative damage bonus based on how much shock there is, and we're doing the shock with the lightning orb. So that's a nice combination between the two, and you just want critical hit chance, more damage, and also critical hit damage. So this is a nice combination. I think you have like a 16% crit chance, or like a 20% crit chance even with this one building up to 100%, which is quite nice. And then with a 20% chance to just deal a massive amount of damage. And this is really what you see in those videos when you see people one-shot them. This is really coming for that. Of course, if I had more links, I would add some more stuff in there. But I'll add those more in the future. For now, I'm a bit broke, so I still need to get those later on. Arc is something I've put in there. Arc still does a pretty substantial amount of damage, especially with Archmage. So this is why I still have Arc in there. And it's still quite nice because usually your damage comes from lightning warping to your ball lightnings, which actually forces you to move to your enemy. Sometimes bosses have like a huge AoE and you don't want to move towards them because your ball lightning needs to move towards them. You need to teleport on that. It's very annoying. So sometimes I just arc, especially if an enemy is almost a little bit low and I'm moving to the right, I just arc them and they're just dead. Still is pretty nice. It's still like a good lightning thing, especially if it hits 500. It's quite nice. Just have the control destruction in there with more damage to hits, and lightning penetration just so it really hits the same amount all the time, and also a little bit less cast speed for the even more damage. So it's really more of a finisher type thing where I just cast it on enemies, or if I'm just using it to bosses if I don't want to move around too much. Then cast on freeze. This is really what's finishing off all of the enemies that are not getting finished off by a lightning warp. This will cast the lightning conduit on them again, so they're getting shocked rounds, and then the lightning conduit is basically finishing them off. And this procs quite a lot of time because cast and freeze gets 10 energy per freeze, and we're freezing with all of our lightning damage, so a lot of freezes is happening everywhere, and this is just constantly casting on them, which is quite nice. And we do have some specs in our passive tree to help this as well. I would say this is one of the first gems I would actually forlink, because I just want to get a little bit more damage on that. This is something I have been playing around with, the 40 less cost. I do see it around in other builds, but it does say cannot support skills with reserve spirit, and this does reserve spirit. So I'm not too sure if it's working. I'm a little bit testing, but sometimes it's a bit difficult to see. But it would be very nice if it has 40% less energy cost. That would be ideal. But if not, just energy retention is just a safe bet. So that I'll just add it in the build guide, which one of the two I picked. Or maybe I picked both if I have a 4 link. Who knows? I do see it in a lot of build guides, so I think it should work. But be a bit careful. It might not. It has not been fully tested by me. So I'm hands off with that one. Thing about Archmage and Cast on Freeze, you do need a 160 spirit minimum, and then 170 spirit if you actually want to upgrade this for 30% mana regen, while Archmage is active, which is all of the time. How do you get this? Basically, you need to go to Act 3 and do the boss twice in the Cruel and the normal difficulty, and I think somewhere else you also get 40 spirit in Act 2, if I believe. But you can just Google PoE2 spirits, and then there's like a Reddit post with all of that stuff. I might just I might just put it in the description so you guys can see that as well. And then you want like 35 spirit on your chest piece and 35 spirit on your amulet, and then you will get 170 spirit, which will allow you to do Cast on Freeze and Archmage, which is quite nice just for the extra combo and a little mana regen. I have Lightning Mastery in there, and for the other one, Impetus and Inspiration, as I said previously. So this is just casting all of that lightning conduit on top of them as well. And Archmage is just increasing all of your damage. You need a lot of mana regen for this, but I think because I don't have the Mind Over Matter, my mana regen is fine, and I can use Archmage quite nicely. And especially with like a little bit of mana regen you get from Soul Drain, it really helps with that Archmage. So for the items, I'm currently using a staff, but I've recently saw, and like for survivability as well, that wand and a shield with a high block chance is really nice as well. You can do in your passive points to get even more block chance. A lot of people have been doing this from the Spark builds. You can just really spy on their builds and just see like, okay, this is what they're doing. Maybe I should copy that as well. You do want a +4 to your spells on your wand, and I think you might be able to get a plus to your shield as well. But I'm not too sure about that, how that works with all of the shields. So if you can, I don't know. It would be very nice, but I think one of the main things you want is that block chance, maximum life resistances. Those are quite nice. And then for your wand, the thing I have is just extra mana. That's one very important. If you can get cast speed on there, that's even better. But lightning, +5 to all lightning spells is really nice as well. Spell damage, you just want as much lightning damage if you can get that as well. And then mana per enemy kill is actually quite nice on there as well, because it's just regenerating a little bit of her mana. I have like 1500 mana under my big head. In the bottom right corner I see like 1500 mana, so 30 mana per enemy killed. Well, if you kill 10 enemies quite quickly, that's already 300 mana, which is quite a big percentage of my mana pool. Later on, if I get like 3 or 4k mana, it might be less worth it, but it's I think it's a T7, so that you do need a little bit of a higher one to actually make this one worth it. It was already on the staff when I bought it, so I was happy with it. Then the big piece that is actually allowing this build is the 3 Dragons head. I think if you get this one with like 10 or 12% elemental res, you can get that for 1 exalt, so it's quite accessible and it really allows you to build the build. Earlier I made this build with the Call of the Brotherhood Topaz ring. Apparently this doesn't work with Archmage, so if you would equip this ring, still a lot of your damage would not only just change everything to cold damage, but it would still apply lightning damage as well. This is coming from your Archmage, so apparently it doesn't transfer everything to cold damage. It is a bit weird, and it makes your damage a little bit half and half. And also this Topaz ring is like I think 10 or 12 exalted or whatever. I paid like 9 for it because I was sniping for it for quite a lot of time. I was really saving up all of my exalted just to buy the ring. But now it's become a lot more accessible with the three Dragons solid mask. So I only spent, I think I spent 4 on this one because it has 18 elemental resistance, so I did get it a little bit cheaper. And I think as many more videos are getting made, this one's gonna get even more expensive, but it is very nice for that cast on freeze enablement. You could try to do it on cast on shock, but the bad thing about this is that the cast on shock is only 2%, and it doesn't count for your shocks from shock round. It really counts from damage to shock. So it doesn't count if you're doing the shock rounds, which is basically already shocking everyone, and then you can't shock them again because they're already in the shock rounds. So it's not really that efficient to do the cast on shock. It does work, it just does the lightning conduit a lot less. So I don't know if you would really want to put that in there or not, but you could try it out. I've tried it out and it wasn't really that effective. I just skipped it when I did it. Further on, moving on Amulet, as I said before, plus the spirit. You want that maximum mana in there as well, and then just get resistances and mana regeneration. Same for the rings. You want that maximum mana. Rarity found is just a quite nice thing, but really not necessary at all. Increase mana regenerations. Really, what you want to get after getting your unique and a nice staff is just trying to max your resistances. I'm currently trying to maximize resistances. I am not maxed out at all, but it is quite difficult to get some nice rest on all of your gear. But I still have some gear that I need to upgrade, and I'm usually just buying gear at 1 Exalt, and then maybe I'll throw another 1 Exalt on it to upgrade it. But this is how I got some pretty decent resistances starting out on the end game. And now the next goal for me is really maxing out that resistance, getting that survivability, because I'm already doing a lot of damage anyway. So for the rings, cast speed is also very nice on there. Not much of your damage, because this is Lightning Warp has like a 0.5 cast speed, so the cast speed doesn't really scale all too well on it. I also removed it from my passive tree a lot because it's not really too efficient, but for your ball lightning it is very noticeable to have some casting speed on there. So I would advise getting 1 Peril Ring just for that extra cast speed, and then also a roll of cast speed on there. And for the rest of it, just you want life, mana, and mana regeneration rate, and then just get your resistances. Those things are the main things you want for your gear. For your chest piece, is a little bit different. You want that plus spirit. Stun threshold is also very nice. I've been noticing that I've been getting stunned very much, and it really doesn't allow you to teleport around at all. So it's very detrimental to your build if you don't have stun threshold. So do try to get that from somewhere. If not your passive tree, do get it from your gear. Your belt and your chest piece are very good for getting your stun threshold up there. You want that spirit so you get to 170, and increased energy shield works very well on your chest piece because it already has a very high base energy shield. So for your gloves, it's quite the same. Mana, life, and resistances, those are the most important things, and you can get some max to energy shield. Boots, you want that movement speed on there. 20% minimum, I would say. That's very noticeable, but anything with movement speed, to be honest, if you have it, equip it, and then just get anything with movement speed, and that will really help as well. Then increased energy shield is a bit nice, but it's a bit difficult to get it to a high level with your boots. And just resistance, stun threshold is something you also can get on your boots, so that's also quite nice. Your belt, there's actually one of the heavy belts that gives like 30% increased stun threshold, I think. So that's very nice to get, but you want resistance, mana, and I think health is the things you want on your gear. Then for your flasks, increased amount and increased recharges. Those are mainly the good ones, so you can keep them up even during a boss that doesn't spawn any ads. So that's very nice just to keep in there. And yeah, you really want to get your resistances capped out. You want your mana to be as high as possible, and your life just to be at a solid pace, because we're not using our mind over matter. This is why we're also not using the other one that does all of your energy to shield, or energy to mana, because we're not at that stage yet where we're survivable enough without all of those, but we're slowly going to transition into those, and I'll make a new video when I've done that and what kind of changes I made. Also, a very nice thing is the charm of the thawing charm. This is very nice because it just removes frozen. You can get frozen very easily with any chill damage, especially if your cold res is not that high. It doesn't increase how fast you're gonna get frozen, but it's just the damage it does. It's very annoying. So I have this one. This one's really nice, and it just grants immunity to freeze. So you can at least get out of a sticky situation with this, and it's just a very nice thing to have because you can build a lot of stun threshold. But any of the free stuff you need to put passive points into there, and I'm really trying to min-max my passive tree right now. So it's a bit of a mess, but I'll show that around. First, of course, the Ascendancy. So I would say go for the strike twice first, and then for the Arcane Surge constantly, you'll be around level 40-ish, 50-ish if you're doing the second Ascendancy. So permanent Arcane Surge is quite nice. And this one, right now I have 100% increase, so it's getting a lot better to actually do this. More effective, but still the amount of damage you get by strike twice is not to be taken lightly. It's just the extra shock chance is dealing so much more multiplicative damage on your lightning conduit that this is why strike twice is earlier than that extra little bit of mana regen and cast speed that you can get from your Arcane Surge. We do, however, slowly build into the Touch of the Arcane, where we actually get more effects of the Arcane Surge. So I'm still a little bit doubting about the beginning, but this is how we've done it, just for the increased spell damage, cast speed, and maximum mana. Then we just get this for a little bit more survivability. We go to the right for even more survivability of the energy shield, mana regen, and also the magnitude of shocks. We're gonna get a lot of magnitude of shocks. If you're still struggling with stun threshold, you can go into this one, which is a lot more stun threshold. You can get, I think somewhere around here, there's another stun threshold of your energy shield, which is quite nice as well. So yeah, here, instead of your life, if you have a lot more energy shield than life, or you have only one life, this is a very nice one to get. I think there's even more magnitude of shock to get around here, but that is a lot of climbing. We just go up, 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 and get our jewel socket. It's quite nice. You can get a good jewel. I don't have good jewels yet. I do want to invest into that to get some better jewels, but yeah, as you can see, I'm still in the start of endgame. I'm really starting to get a lot more money now, or currency, but it's still a little bit on the beginning phases. So then we go to the right for that increased lightning damage per intelligence, and also the magnitude of a shock again. This is just getting that 20% shock damage multiplicative bonus. I'm not sure if it's multiplicative or additive, but the 20%, we're just getting that up to, I think, 56% right now through all of these magnitude of shock. Then more intelligence, also more energy shield. We do get all of these just for that extra mana cost, and spell damage, and also more mana regen. We don't get Eldritch Battery yet, because I think survivability wise we're not there yet. I think maybe if you do like a wand and shield, survivability wise we could get there, and then we could actually get a lot more mana, but we also need some mana regen to actually compensate for that. So we went to the right and actually did the energize and the invocated efficiency, just to do a lot more of that lightning conduit to our cast on freeze. I'm not too sure how much better this one is, but 45% increase for that lightning conduit is really a big banger. So this can really help with some extra damage. And this is just for more energy refunding. I did have this one for the increased freeze buildup, because we are doing freeze now, and hits ignore elemental resistance on frozen enemies, just doing that extra damage with your lightning conduit when they're frozen, and just even more build up and increased damage. Now I'm slowly building into the mana before life. This is just adding a lot more survivability, and will allow me to get the Eldritch Battery, because I will get all of the mana for before life nodes. I do also want to get a little bit more gems to also do a lot more of that. And to the left side, we went for a little bit more gem. Still, there's a bad gem in there. I will hopefully get better gems in the future, so I can actually get that. But then we also did effects of Arcane Surge. I think this gives like a 60% effect, which is quite nice. And we also did more magnitude of our shock, so this is also very nice. And we also did this because there's only 2 points to get the increased crit chance for your lightning conduit, and then also a little bit of increased elemental damage once you've critted. I do want to build slowly to the left to get even more damage before mana. Maybe I'll anoint this with the Ire, Disgust, and Greed, but I haven't checked the price. I think this is like 10 or 15 exalted just to do this, so I'm not too sure if that's actually possible to do with my current build. I'll just focus on leveling some other stuff. We did take out all of these points in our cast speed, because Lightning Warp is such a low cast speed. I thought it was much more efficient not to do that. And Lightning Conduit has a very long cast time, so it's gonna leave you vulnerable anyway. So the extra cast speed wasn't really all too nice for how many points it cost me. But maybe later on I'll do get the jewel sockets here and there, just to put in more jewels, because in the jewels you can also get your damage taken for mana before life as well. And if you want even more survivability with a shield, you would go all the way to the left and get your increased damage per block chance and a little bit more block chance increase, which would just increase your survivability by a ton, and you even get a jewel socket in there, which is quite nice as well. But that's something I will get when I'm leveling a bit more. I think I'm level 70 now, so that's gonna be that. that's gonna be it for the video. I want to give a huge shout out to Lexyu. He has made this video and he's keep posting updates on it, and I would definitely follow him, giving him a subscribe, give him a like as well, because this build is totally amazing. I just gave him a little bit of a different perspective of someone who's actually building through it. So I hope maybe he learns from something from this as well and upgrades that into his build. That'd be very nice. But I just want to thank everyone for watching. I'll see you guys in the next videos. Ciao.